activity-based systems. We've been talking about just-in-time, and I thought you'd enjoy a little romp through the timeline of the evolution of just-in-time. And it starts way back in the 1800s in the Industrial Revolution. And you may recall that we had this guy named Eli Whitney. Do you remember him? The cotton gin. And what was so important about Eli Whitney is he was the first one to come up with the idea that parts should be interchangeable. In other words, when you make a bolt, that bolt should not just be made for that particular product, but bolts should be of a common size so that you had interchangeable parts. And so it was a lot faster then to make a product because you could order 4 bolts. You didn't have to make 4 bolts by hand and use those parts interchangeably. The second person that impacted or was kind of the forefather of just-in-time is Frederick Taylor. And Frederick Taylor standardized work. He said, you know, there is a right way to get things done. And so standardized procedures and processes for doing work. Now, most of the work still was done when you made like a car. It was you made one car at a time, but how you went about making that car process was standardized. Then came the gall brace. Now, the gall brace were a husband and wife team, and if you've ever seen the old movie Cheaper by the Dozen, it was about them and their family. And it was called Cheaper by the Dozen because the gall brace had 12 children. And not only did they use their children for their time in motion studies, in other words, what was the most efficient and effective way of loading 12 kids into a car and unloading 12 kids from a car, but that was also their life's work. So what they did is they did process value analyses of how work was done, and they looked for ways to eliminate waste. In other words, could you do it faster? Could you do it better? How can I improve the processes? And so that's the gall brace. Then came Henry Ford and Charles Sorensen, and you'll remember them from Cars. And when they made their cars, the reason they were so successful was they stopped making one car or one product at a time at that location and came up with the concept of the assembly line. In other words, you lined up your workers and basically a belt went by the workers and each worker added a particular part. So it was much more efficient because that worker knew precisely the task or activity they had to do on that car or that product. So Henry Ford, Charles Sorensen, because of them, cars got very cheap because they came up with the production line concept. Then, after World War II, and Japan was being rebuilt, there were 2 individuals who worked for Toyota, and they said, you know, we're spending an awful lot of money and a lot of our resources are being tied up in inventory, and there's got to be a better way than if I make it, somebody will buy it. And they came up with the Toyota way. Now, these gentlemen's names, last name is Ono and Shingo. And there's a Shingo Prize even now. So Ono and Shingo, Toyota. What they did is they came up with the just-in-time philosophy, where they said it's very important to manage your inventory. Because if you manage your inventory or eliminate or reduce it, then are you able to be more flexible and agile in the workplace, in the business world, and produce what is really selling. So this is kind of a background for the evolution of just-in-time.